Hey, welcome to Year in Review with NYAOT Executive Director Christopher Koetzle. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Libby.
Um,
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I can't wait to hear these questions.
we do have, thanks to everybody that submitted questions ahead of time or if they couldn't join us. We thought since today marks Chris's first full year as Executive Director of the New York Association of Towns, we would kind of take a moment to see where we came from, see where we're headed, and just have kind of a nice conversation about the status of NYAOT as it stands right now. So thank you. Chris, did you want to do a little intro or do you want to get right into the questions?
Well, I think by now everybody knows my name is Chris Koetzle, Executive Director, celebrating 1 year today. Thrilled to be here. It's been a great year. I mean, I think it went really fast, Libby. I think I feel it anyway. I'm sure the staff thinks so as well. It's looking back, it's astonishing how much we've accomplished this past year, and hopefully we'll get into some of that as we talk, take questions and talk about things. And really, I think it's been, just a great testament to the great work that the staff has been doing. I want to thank first and foremost the executive committee before we start, what leadership they provided over the year. Cindy Galeber in particular, Bill Melee. Bill was the president when the transition committee was happening. Cindy was the incoming president. Both did phenomenal job in the transition. The executive committee was gracious, supportive, couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. They gave me latitude, understood the changes that I wanted to make, and talked about, stayed engaged throughout the year on all of those. And I just want to thank also the great staff. I mean, phenomenal staff that we have here that have responded to the challenges, that have done so much to really move this association forward prior to me even coming on scene, but continuing this past year. And it's been a thrill. I know there's been difficult moments. There's been, there's some risks that we took. There's some things that paid off. There's some things that didn't work. We'll probably get into that, but it's been a great experience. And I do believe I have a lot more gray hair than I had previously last year at this time.
Very
but
presidential.
That's okay. That's okay. So that's my intro, Libby.
Awesome. Well, we hope that you had a great, I think you had a great year. And I think there's a lot more to come, it seems. So congrats on your first full year. And
thank you.
Let's start with, if anybody has any questions, please feel free. There's a Q&A button, should be at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to ask your questions and we'll get to them probably a little bit towards the end, but all right, let's talk about some of the programs that we've launched this year. How would you kind of frame some of that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great, and it's been great working with you, Libby, as the member engagement person. And really, as we kind of sat down and thought about really the value of the association, it was about partly the membership programs that we're providing and making sure we're engaging members in the programs that they're interested in. And some of the interesting programs I think we came up with over this course of this past year, I'll just talk about three of them. We came up with many of them, but I don't want to take too much time just getting bogged down in the programs. But, the Amazon program, widely successful so far. And that has been a really valuable program to our members because it did a couple of things. First of all, it provided direct financial benefit to the town, the $1,400, the $1,500, whatever it is, that is free to the town, providing the discounts. It also provided, efficiencies for our members where they're able to streamline their purchasing. And so when we look at programs like that, you and I looked at that, evaluated that with Amazon, negotiated with them. And I'm particularly proud about it because really there's only two states in the entire country that are doing it, Ohio and New York. And I went out to Ohio and learned about it by accident. I went out to visit the association, the Ohio Association of Towns, and my colleague out there, the executive director, to do, and we'll talk a little bit about some of that, I think, later, but to learn more about how they're running things. And we found this great program. And so that program has been wonderful. I think a great addition. It does everything we want it to do. It provides value, provides financial benefit. It provides something special for our members, helps them in everyday, their everyday life. The other thing we identified early, as you know, working with Katie on this, is workforce development issues. And we started putting programs, and we'll talk about some of the legislative things we're doing in that area, but started putting programs around the workforce development issue that are facing local governments. And working with her and Cassidy and, the other staff members, really created a micro-credential program with SUNY, which is innovative and unique. No one else has something like this. And we created a innovative micro-credential program in local government services so that not just SUNY students, and obviously students are our key demographic, and we're trying to get them to understand the opportunities that are, around for local government employment, but also town employees who are already employed that want to expand or want to better themselves. They can also take it. It's an online program. It's asynchronous, so you can do it at your own pace. And really putting that micro-credential program where our employees of our towns and students coming into college, and even if you're not going to college, can take these programs, learn more about employment opportunities, and be prepared for local government service. And so that's a very clear area where we jumped in to try to help our members with an issue. And the last one I'll bring up is NYMEF, which is the New York Municipal Empowerment Foundation. We're working on putting a foundation together to address many issues that our local governments have, our towns have. Three things that NYMEF is going to do. Number one, it is going to provide scholarships for those town employees and those students who want to better themselves and learn and be able to take on other positions within towns. So scholarships is an important part of that. Legal aid is another important part of that, where we're able to support towns who want to take on legal action against any encroachment on home rule. We all know home rule is the heart and soul of the association. And oftentimes when the legislature and the governor come out with something that imposes on home rule, it's only the town that has the standing to sue. The association can't. And so, we want to help make sure, because a lot of towns don't have the resources to do that. And so we're going to help make sure that we're defending home rule. That's really core to our whole existence, and providing legal services for that. And the last one we're going to do with that is to go out and talk to the 9.1 million New Yorkers who are town residents and explain to them what towns do, how important towns are, the frontline services towns provide, because I think it's important for the association not just to talk to the membership, but to talk to the audience that the membership is interested in, and that's the residents, the 9.1 million New Yorkers. And we're going to make sure they understand the job opportunities that exist as well in local governments and towns. And so we'll be doing that through community and public relations outreach. So those are the three major, I think, programs of the past year that I just wanted to touch on.
Absolutely. And I think there's more to come with that. But in terms of workforce development, I believe that, you identified that as a major factor impacting our local governments. So that's part of the reason that we're so excited about the SUNY Potsdam micro-credential and Westchester Community College micro-credentials and certification programs. Do you want to talk about some of the other? I think that's a major priority of ours for legislative advocacy. Do you want to talk about any other sort of factors impacting our members legislatively?
Yeah, so we really worked hard. Sarah Brancatel is our legislative director and deputy director, and she's doing a phenomenal job. Has done a phenomenal job in that role. But when I came in last year, Sarah and I had a lot of discussions about how can we elevate, how can we do more for our members in this role. Advocacy is such a critical service for our members. We hear it all the time. And we're threatened a lot across the state, obviously, with things that come out of the legislature right next to us here and get signed into law. And so we've really worked hard on a couple of things. The budget is apparently done now, we're hearing. We believe that we've preserved CHIPS, which is important. We believe that we got the 50 million back in an additional AIM, which is critically important. We spent a lot of time talking about a program we call SWAP, which is Sewer Water Infrastructure Program. The A stands for advancement, not infrastructure, but SWIP wasn't as attractive as SWAP, I guess. But it is a program like CHIPS that is formula based that would allow towns to receive funding from the state based on the formula, and it would be predictable every year funding to put into the infrastructure for sewer and water. Nothing's more important than clean water to residents, and we have to make sure we're investing in that program. And with all the mandates coming out of Albany, it's important that they invest in it because they're putting so many more mandates with the PFOA level lowering for towns and communities with water plants, with a lead pipe abatement issue going on. And so, we've spent a lot of time really talking about those important issues to our towns. We have a whole legislative agenda that our resolution committee has approved and was adopted by the membership at the annual meeting. I won't get into all of that, but there's a lot of really good stuff on there. Go to our website and check it out. Workforce development initiatives that we are going to address legislatively. We can address some of these concerns with the legislative changes to, say, civil service, which is grossly outdated and really makes it difficult for towns to hire easily. And I think towns need more flexibility. So we're talking about some changes there. And there's more to the legislative agenda on that. Also, the tax cap formula, which needs to be amended. And there's a lot of reasons it needs to be amended. It needs to be amended for, first of all, to stop the pilot penalty. We call it the pilot penalty. There's no reason why a local government should be penalized for having a pilot and have it reduced from their tax cap limit. We know that they're not going to eliminate the tax cap or they're really loath to even change it, but we continue to work forward on making sure that they do that. And so, infrastructure investments, things like that should not be a factor under the cap. But what I want to say, I think the hallmark of our legislative agenda or legislative action that Sarah and I have spent a lot of time on this past year has been really building relationships and rebuilding relationships with the association and some of the key legislators, some of the agencies, and perhaps most importantly, the governor herself. We didn't have the best of relationship as an association. We just have to be honest about these things. And we spent a lot of time just backing up, getting to know each other a little better, getting to understand. And, my mantra for Sarah and for our legislative team was, we will be supportive. We will support the governor where we can. We will oppose her where we must, but we will always do it with respect. And I think as long as we all understand that we have our mission and we're true to our mission, and where we find common ground, we'll work together, but where we need to defend home rule or where we need to defend our members, we will defend our members. And I think we got to a really good place with the governor and with others. And I'm proud to say we had a governor address our conference for the first time in many, many years. I'm told since Governor Pataki. I don't know if that's true, but if it's true, that'd be over 30 years ago. And so she came down and she gave a great address to our members. Our members appreciated it. And I think the relationships that we're starting to build, I think, is what I'm most proud of over the past 12 months.
I think we did some great work on SWAP. I seem to remember a couple of op-eds. So I think, and our members actually also really helped us in those, in that sort of effort by letting us know $5,000 might not seem like a lot, but here's how it would help our small town, our small water system. So that was very helpful, regardless of whether anything comes up from it. But
yeah, no, you and your group were great at, really the key is communicating, educating. And so what we learned is that, maybe the legislature wasn't that engaged in understanding this. Maybe the governor's office wasn't that engaged in understanding this, but you and the legislative team really put together a great outreach and education package. And we actually got the Senate to put SWAP in their one house proposal, their one house budget. That's work that this association did to make sure that people understood it, and the Senate gets it. The Assembly's not quite there yet. We'll get them there, and we'll continue to communicate with them. And I think the governor's office is very close. I think that they understand it better. I think everybody understands it better because of the work, and maybe we'll get into this in a little while, the work that we've done in outreach through your department and through Sarah's department.
Absolutely. What do you see? What can members look for in terms of not just programs, but outreach? How can they help us deliver our message? We want it to be kind of a unified effort, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's regarding advocacy itself or just generally engagement, but as you know, our big initiative this year was member engagement. How do we engage the member and get the member more involved? Because really it is the voice of the member that is the loudest and most important. And so I always tell members all the time, we're down here, we're working hard every day, we're making inroads, it's working, but nothing is more powerful than you talking to your legislator, your own assembly member, your own senator. Nothing's more powerful than a story and something that has come out of your town, something that you have faced, and writing about that in an op-ed or a letter to the editor or communication to the governor's office. One of the things that I was able to draw upon in this past year that has been critically important is my 12 years as a supervisor. I'm sorry, my 15 years as a supervisor.
Cut yourself short.
I got short on that. 17 years on the town board, but I often draw on those experiences and I tell the legislators, and they listen to that when you're able to say, hey, I went through this. I know what this is like. So you getting involved is critically important. Also hearing from you on what the issues are. And so you telling us what are some of the things we should be focused on. I remember this as a supervisor, and I've gotten this from a few supervisors since, is, we need a seat at the table when the county IDA is negotiating pilots. And I agree 100%. And that came out of a town down in the Long Island area that we now have on our resolutions committee, and we're pushing forward. So our members really, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, it's your association. So start driving these issues towards us so that we can get to work on what's important to you. We know what's important, we do, but there's so much out there still that we may be missing, or we may not be aware of. Wow, that really is important. The salt shortage this year, the road salt shortage this year, kind of rose out of nowhere for us, and we got engaged in that because some members had contacted us. So stay in contact with us. Let us know what's important, and we love to go to work for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's we all know that money's tight, budgets are small, budgets are strapped, but we need to know how that's affecting you sort of in your day-to-day to be able to advocate for you. And some of those real world examples are really helpful and impactful when we talk to the state or sometimes even federal representatives. I told people that they could expect a candid and frank recap. You were very candid at the annual meeting. You did an amazing presentation of your time up to then and kind of where we had come from historically in terms of the annual meeting and other things with the association. Did you want to share with the people today what kind of challenges you envision? Obviously, they're strapped, we're strapped. We all sort of share this experience. Did you want to let them know what we're looking at and what we're working on in terms of budgeting and things like that?
Yeah. So, I think that it's funny because a lot of people know me as a former supervisor, and that was, again, my 15 years. But prior to that, I was a vice president of a statewide membership organization that really was all about small businesses. We had 20,000 small business members across the state, and we provided them many of the same services that the association provides our town members. So I've kind of been at this a long time, and I was able to see really, again, when you think 10, 12, 15 years ago when I was with that association to now, association world, I have a watermark that I can compare to how different it is. It is vastly different. And I think, COVID certainly, and we'll probably talk about the impact of COVID on the association at some point, but, COVID had a watershed moment, defining moment for a lot of industries, a lot of things, but certainly for associations as well. And I think one of the things we learned from COVID, number one, is how important associations are. How connected the association kept its members, kept its towns. You guys went to work. I wasn't part of the association at the time, but you went to work every day, continuing to deliver those services that are important to our members. But when you look at where we are with costs today, where we are with inflation, where we are with all these issues, it stresses a budget, any organization's budget. And when you look at, and this is kind of what we talked about down at the annual meeting, when you look at things like membership dues, which are a third of our budget revenues, membership dues, have not been touched since the 80s, Yet, when you think about all the costs of doing business, has kind of gone like, this since the 80s. All that compounds on itself. And you look at that and you say, how can you possibly run an organization when you're not right sizing your revenue streams? And I get the whole concept that we want to make sure that we stay affordable, we stay, able for towns because they are also facing the same pressures in their budget. I get it. I'm a supervisor. I know the 2% tax cap and, the levy is the only real revenue source. So it's very difficult. But when you look at that, and when you look at the fact that we've been losing money over the years in two areas that are concerning to me, one is education, because that is such a critical point of our mission, but our educational programming, and number two, our conferences, which, slightly different. There's a component of education in the conference, but the annual meeting in particular has been an issue of fairly significant losses that have grown each year since COVID. So, that's a trend that we just turned around in this last annual meeting in 2025. Thankfully, we cut our loss in half there. So that's a very positive sign. And, over the years, the association has been able to find other ways of kind of covering the loss of those programs. But as things get more difficult and as pressures come onto associations and come onto organizations and the costs continue to rise, that becomes more and more difficult. So, as difficult as it is something I'm engaging the executive committee in saying, we need to take a look at the value of membership. We need to take a look at what that should be valued at. And we need to look at what our conferences and our training costs are as well. At the same time, we're spending a lot of time trying to find ways of trimming the costs, which, obviously is the other part of the equation, and doing things differently. As much as in-person training is very important to people, and we're committed to that, and we're always going to do it, it's very expensive. We know that online training offers people opportunities that they could do at a much lower rate, so it's a win-win for everybody. It's cheaper for the member, it's cheaper for the town, it's much cheaper for us. We're able to charge a much lower fee and yet still probably make more of a margin on that than we would in an in-person, but both are important. And so we're going to look at how we can do more of the online, how we can do more things, maybe more regionally in areas, get into people's kind of backyards so it's cheaper for them to travel or whatever. But we're looking at all those ways of trying to change that and making sure that we're still delivering the great value that we always delivered and that it's still affordable. But there comes a time when every organization has to say, I mean, what town in this state hasn't increased its taxes at some point over the last 20 years? It just has to happen because you have to keep up with the growing expenses that an organization is facing.
And then I guess sort of along those lines, somebody did submit a question that considering this is the New York Association of Towns, emphasis on towns, wouldn't it make more sense to have the annual meeting where it's most central to all the other towns and not New York City? The suggestion was maybe Syracuse. So I know you've touched on that. We're definitely always looking into this. It's an ongoing conversation, honestly, year round, I could say.
There's probably been nothing more on my mind. There's been things that are equally been on my mind, but nothing more on my mind than the annual meeting. Yeah. And there's issues. There are issues. And we survey on this. And again, every time we put a survey out, please try to respond to it because it's so critically important to hear from you. Your answers inform our decisions, and we want to be responsive. And we'll talk a little bit about, I think, how we could be more engaged with our members and understanding what it is that you are looking for. But when we talk about the annual meeting in New York, it's funny, when I've been a part of this association as a supervisor for many, many years. I was on the executive committee for 7. I often said that too. Why aren't we supporting our towns? And I quickly learned that the annual meeting's so big that really there's nowhere else in the state, no other city that can handle it, really. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, no town really. And actually in New York City, only 2 hotels can. The Hilton and the Marriott, and that is it. And so, as we look at trying to build back, and we've been building back since COVID, our heyday back, way back, 3,000 people come to this thing. We're climbing back to about 1,500 last year now. And so 12 to 1,500. And so, when we look at trying to build it back, because it is so valuable, so many people had so many great things to say about it. It's hard to then say, well, let's move it somewhere to a small venue that can't handle, more than 500 people. You just can't do that. And so we're looking at working with Emily and some of the other folks on our staff, looking at ways of how we can continue to keep that tradition alive in New York City, grow it, but also then give other opportunities for people. Because when we survey this, as I started to say, 50% of our membership wants us to stay in New York, and 50% of our membership wants us to leave New York. And so, it's a vexing problem. It's not a slam dunk decision. And when you have all these different ideas and thoughts, we have to try to figure out, well, how can we deliver the best product for our members? And I think we're going to see some hybrid of a New York City. It'll always be in New York City, I believe. And, the executive committee is going to work hard on this year, 2025. Because we have to start having decisions in 2026 going forward. The staff is working hard on it. But I believe it's looking like a hybrid of a New York City, kind of a big conference, something that's special, but then also then go out into the regions and do some more like regional things so that we can touch on those, deliver services to those people that say to us, I will not travel to New York City. And I respect that. I respect that the people that want to go, and I respect the people that don't want to go. And it's our job to figure out how do we service all those folks. And that's what we'll be focusing on in 2025.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough
Always. Sort of along those lines, we did unveil a logo refresh down in New York City. I do have a question. There seems to have been a rebranding, NYAOT, which I actually read as Night Out, so NYAOT. Please state the rationale for this. What was your thoughts behind that? Speak about the process a little bit.
Yeah, so we did a little brand refresh. I wouldn't say that we necessarily rebranded as much, but when I came in, one of the things I kind of assessed was that AOT. Those 3 letters, that acronym, meant nothing to most people. The people that knew AOT, it meant a lot to, and they understood it and they got it. But as we're trying to increase our reach across the state, as we're trying to engage legislators again and trying to engage more members, AOT doesn't speak to anybody. And one of the things that was very clear to me was that every other statewide organization started with an NY something. And NYSAC, NICOM, NYMER, we can go on and on. And some people say, well, okay, don't follow the crowd, and that's fine. I get that. But also, sometimes you got to look at it and say, there's a reason why it's working for everybody else. And when you look at NYAOT as opposed to AOT, no matter what, when you say that, people automatically know it's a statewide something. They automatically know it has something to do with the state of New York, statewide association. They may not know what it is, but at least puts them in the realm and the ballpark of what we are. And I thought that was critically important when we're trying to communicate to people who we are and what we do. And, I really hit me hard. And again, Libby, you talked about being frank and open, and really that's the only way I can be. When I was appointed executive director over a year ago now, this was happening in April, I knew a lot of people across the state, and they would call me up and they would say, oh, congratulations. I never heard of the organization, but congratulations. And they asked me about it. And I always had to say this to explain it to them. Have you ever heard of NICOM? And they said, yes. You understand NICOM? Yes. Then you understand well, at the time, AOT for towns. And so I thought this brand refresh was important to try to communicate who we are and what we do easier and clearer to folks who don't know us that we're trying to reach. And I think it's working. I've gotten that feedback repeatedly from folks. In the brand refresh, I think what was important because AOT has such a great name with its members who engaged us previously. We wanted to make sure that stayed in the logo. And so that made sense to go to NYAOT as opposed to, there's talk of NY Towns, there's talk of other things, but we thought AOT was so critically important, had so much brand value with the people that knew us that we would keep that. And the other thing the designer did really well, his name is Nathaniel, Koetzle area, did a great job on this, incorporated a fresher, more, modern look, but also, more vibrant, but also held on to the characteristics of the other logo as well. So we're kind of like looking forward, but holding on to our past, understanding there's a tradition. And when we sat down and did this, we gave Nathaniel, the mandate to say, do something like that, make it fresher, but the town crier has to stay. The town crier has to stay. The town crier is the foundation of the organization. The town crier is the foundation of towns. And I think Nathaniel did a wonderful job with the symbol of the tricorn hat that looks modern, with the crier inside that tricorn hat that is modern. And I think it's a great melding of those two. And so I think it's achieving its goal. Anytime you do a brand refresh, it's painful. I know, Libby, for you, you've got to redesign everything and relogo everything, and it's a little expensive. But I think it's freshened the brand. I think it's denoted who we are a little bit better, and I think it's helped us communicate a little bit better as well.
I think it was great. It was definitely a careful process. And I think it's helped to elevate us on social media, brand awareness. I know that was a major goal. So would you like to talk about some of the, I guess, services or new ways we are trying to communicate with our members? Picturing the podcast right now. Flashing letters. Yeah.
We really, one of the other initiatives that I really wanted to get off the ground was to engage our members more. And, I'll talk probably a little bit later about technology and some other things that have been a little bit challenging, but it was important, I think, to communicate to our members more. And I talked a little bit about that earlier, where we did it in our legislative programming, where Sarah and her team has elevated the communications we put out. We put out the weekly newsletter, electronic newsletter on what happened in Albany that past week, a good summary. Katie's doing great work with the roundtables electronically. I made it a priority to get out into the state and visit each and every one of our areas. And I've, done 10, 12 of these already. And I do roundtables out in the community to talk about, all things NYAOT, but then also to hear and listen and learn from our members. And I think we've gotten so many great ideas and thoughts from our members through all these different communication pieces. And then, one of the major investments we've made is, as you mentioned, in social media. And there isn't anywhere I go now across the state that has not said to me that they've noticed a big uptick in our social media. And, we brought new people in. We've added to our departments to bring more services forward for our members. Nick Benton has been, phenomenal in his work with the social media postings and keeping people updated on what we're doing. And then the podcast, I never thought we'd be podcasters, but, here we are working on, I think we had 10, 11 episodes already done, and we have quite a following there. So go to YouTube and type in Association of Towns of New York or New York Association of Towns, and you'll find our channel. And do me a favor, like it, share it, and subscribe, and you'll get all the updates every time we do a podcast. This very webinar will be turned into a podcast. We're also on Spotify. Same thing there. Find us on Spotify and Apple. I guess we're going to be on the Apple platform pretty soon. So, those are all opportunities for us to engage our members more, to try to have a two-way conversation with our members. And everyone's, I think, on the staff is invested in that. And I think we've really elevated our communications with our members.
And along the same lines as sort of advocacy and training, if you have any ideas, if our members have any ideas or topics that they'd either like to see covered or participate in any of these sort of outreach member highlights, reach out to us, give us a shout. I think that's really important. I'm going to pivot a little bit back to legislatively. We did have a question submitted on talking about EMS services, which I know was a major issue that we were looking into and focused on. The question is, towns undertaking EMS services has not always been bad or unmanageable plan. Offering such ensures stability of service and quick response times to residents. Please outline how towns can work with the state to continue to make this work. What kind of work are we doing in EMS?
Well, first and foremost, and let me back up and readdress home rule in this context. We really don't take, the association doesn't take policy stance on, say, energy or housing or emergency services. Whatever the state feels that it wants to do in that policy area, certainly, their purview. Where we take a position is on home rule, that it's the heart and soul, and it is everything we're about. And so if there's anything that comes forward, even if it's positive, even if somebody is for it, 90% for, the bill or the law, if there's a mandate involved, we're going to oppose it, because what's good for one town is not necessarily good for another town. We're a very diverse state. I've been all over the state. You all know this already. Adirondacks is very different than Hudson Valley, very different than Western New York, Southern Tier, Long Island, wherever you are, very different. We're different in diversity as far as size of towns. We have the largest town in the entire nation here on Long Island, Hempstead, second biggest municipality in the state, all the way down to some of the smallest towns that you're going to find, 300 people. And so one size does not fit all. Where some towns want to provide EMS, other towns do not want to. Other towns can't afford to. That mandate on a town would be devastating to its taxpayers. And so our position has been that we will support, we certainly agree there's a critical need for EMS services in the state. It's been broken, but frankly, it's been broken from the state level. And so now to just throw it onto the towns or the counties even is a bit unfair as a mandate, and then try to have them figure out through a new taxing jurisdiction, which, by the way, will shatter your tax cap because it's a new taxing jurisdiction. Which is unfair, wouldn't be something that we support. So we've been working with the state to try to get them to understand, yes, it's important, it's critical, we need to find a solution, but mandating it is not the solution. We understand there's a budget in place right now. We have very unclear on what the EMS mandate is right now. We don't know if it's on the counties, if it's on the towns, or both, or whatever. We just don't have any of that information yet. We're working hard to try to get it. It seems like there's a lot of confusion actually within the legislature on that alone. And so that's kind of like where our stance is. And the last thing I'll say about EMS, it's a crisis. And the crisis was created, in my view, as a supervisor of a town, I lived through this, in the fact that the state does not reimburse the Medicaid costs to the level of the service. And so it's very difficult for a small town, say a town of 30,000 people, to start getting into the business of providing EMS. And then when they're providing these Medicaid transfers, not getting reimbursed to the level that it costs because the state's not reimbursing properly, and then have to turn around and put that on the taxpayer. That's a very difficult thing. The private entities that do this very often are in a business model where they have other lines of business that are covering the loss. The EMS service is more times than not a loss, and they're using either their home health aides or business or their nursing home business to subsidize that. Towns don't have that ability. And the last thing I'll just comment on that is that, really when you look at the cost of providing critical care like this, it's very difficult to put on a small group of people. It really needs to be a regional approach, is what we've talked about. I've talked about counties, but maybe even bigger than counties. It needs to be a regional approach so that cost is spread over a much bigger tax base than what towns are able to provide.
It's kind of a tough time to be in town government.
It is a tough time.
And workforce development. I don't know, Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
I think you talk about it being difficult in local government today, and it really is. And I'm in awe of all the work that our members do every day. They provide the frontline services to their residents, and they're doing more with less, it seems like, every day. More mandates. I think, the two biggest threats that I see for towns today are, number one, the erosion of home rule, and we're very aware of it. We're very much engaged in it. We very much talk about that every time we're over at the legislature or in the governor's office. But two, the mandates that are coming out of Albany, that have come out of Albany, make it very, very difficult for towns to deliver these services affordably. And when you look at the fact that towns in particular are in a bad position because cities and counties have other revenue streams. Towns don't have these other revenue streams. Towns have the levy. Most towns don't by right have any right to the sales tax. If your county shares sales tax with you, that's great. And if they share it fairly, that's even better. But not every county shares fairly. Not every county shares at all. And so, you don't have this growth in sales tax, and all you can do is go to the levy every time a service is added. And so, you look at the MS4 mandates, you look at the new wetlands mandates. These are all things that fall onto towns, and it's just more and more expensive for towns to provide these services. So those are the things that we are fighting for. The other thing I just want to bring up that, when you think about the Association of Towns and you kind of learn about it, one of the things that I was most impressed with is the insurance lines that we work in partnership with, the Comp Alliance and NYMER, for example. Those are both association programs. We work with, in NYMER's situation, we work with NYSAC and NYCOM together, and in the Comp Alliance, we work with NYCOM on that. Those are critically important programs for our members. They were so well designed and set up for such great reasons because, nobody understands the municipal market like municipalities do, and they're run by municipalities. And I think that's so, so important and beneficial. You look at Comp Alliance, for example, they're able to provide millions of dollars back in revenue rebates to revenues to their towns through their safety programs. And so, you look at the awards that they've given over the years, that's direct investments back in the members and the subscribers into the towns. We're working right now, Libby, on putting together a retiree health insurance volunteer program to help try to drive down the premium cost of health insurance. We know our towns are struggling with health insurance issues, costs of health insurance, and we can't get into the active market right now, but we certainly can offer a volunteer program for retirees to think about moving into that would hopefully lower that cost of premium, provide the same equal level of care and or services, and also help the towns save money, help the retirees save money. So these are all the things that we're starting to look at right now and see if we can help replicate what Comp Alliance has done, what NYMER has done, providing affordable, good coverage, protecting our members with insurance programs that are important, that are run by the municipalities themselves, and not some carrier in some far off area that just looks at dollars and cents and doesn't make good decisions for our members.
Well, I know I see a lot of synergy between, workforce development, working on benefits, saving our members money. It makes sense to me. So I definitely see the vision. And I notice our brand new president official today is on the webinar session. So I just wanted to congratulate Mike Marinaccio, supervisor from the town of Dickinson. We'll be having a more of a ceremony, I guess, later this month. Is that, I don't know, accurate?
Yeah, we're looking forward, sad to see, Cindy's term come to an end. She was phenomenal, but excited for Mike to start. Mike from the town of Dickinson just came back from visiting down in Broome County. We had a great visit with the chamber and the IDA and some other folks down there, and then a bunch of the towns and villages. And so Mike's a great guy, been involved with the association a long time supervisor, knows the issues. Looking forward to his leadership. We'll be getting together May 13th or so with an executive committee meeting and making sure we properly thank Cindy for her service and also make sure we properly welcome Mike into his new role. He's been worked his way up through the ranks of, fifth vice president all the way up to first and now president. So we're excited about that. And we have a lot of great initiatives this year too that Mike and the executive committee and the staff will be working on. And so, a lot of great things ahead. One of the things I just wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about was how important it is for an organization to be technologically astute and aware and able. And I think one of the things that we focused on early last year was trying to bring us a little bit more up to speed with technology. And we're kind of there. We made a big investment in technology in 2024, and that kind of got us back into that brought us into the 21st century and kind of got us right back into the game. There's still a long way to go on technology and things that we can do, but most organizations talk about, I studied this a long time ago, and I think it's still true today. There are three things in an organization are critically important to its success. It's people, process, and technology. You have those three things together, then you've got a well-run organization. When I came here, I quickly assessed we had the right people. People are phenomenal on staff. Very talented, very dedicated, very passionate, very hard workers. Yes, we had to make some changes and move people around and look at realigning people into areas that were more important, that may not have been getting attention. The areas weren't getting attention that they should have gotten. We brought three new people in over this past year. They all have been great additions. So I'm very comfortable with people. Process, we worked on a little bit. We still have a little bit more work to go on that. But once we get our processes down, that will help us as well. But technology is really where we have to spend some really good time trying to figure out a couple of things. Technology is great for helping to gain efficiencies, which we need more of, for helping us to understand our members better. My focus this year is to understand the member on the granular level, on the individual level. I want to understand what's important to our members individually, so that we know Supervisor X in this town thinks this, and Supervisor Y or town clerk or highway superintendent or whoever. And you think about the association and the challenges that we have going forward is we're so large, and we have 933 towns in the state, but in those 933 towns, we have many, many, many positions. We have supervisor, town board, clerk, receiver, assessor, the highway superintendent, planning board, comptrollers. The list goes on and on and on of the people we serve. And so one of the challenges, and I know, Libby, you struggle with this too as a member engagement person, and we all do, is how do we be everything to everyone? And there's this kind of saying that if you try to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to no one. And that's true. But that said, we still have a responsibility to reach thousands and thousands of members. And we have almost 30,000 members, 25,000 members, something like that in our database. And that's only the ones who are in our database. there's still so many more that aren't in our database. How do we become relevant to each and every one of those folks? How do we serve each and every one of those people's needs? And I believe technology will do that. I believe technology will give us the tools that we need to make sure that we're serving each individual member to the level that they want to be served. That's the critical thing, right? Associations are really good at telling people what it is that we do, what it is that we're going to provide you. But what's more important is for us to understand what it is that the individual member wants. Because as we talked about, we get the survey results, right? We get the quantitative information and it tells us something, but oftentimes it's a 40, 60, 50, 50 split somewhere in there, and it's not very clear. And so I think that we have to find ways of making sure that we're serving everybody's needs, not just the group as we can, try to ascertain. And oftentimes with the surveys, we don't necessarily get a big turnout when you consider the size of the population. So if you get maybe a couple hundred surveys, that's a lot, but we have a couple thousand, well, more than a couple thousand. We have 20, somewhere between 20 and 30,000 members in our database. So those are some of the challenges I think that going forward, and technology will be one of them. We haven't even gotten into AI yet and the impact AI may have on a membership, but that's a whole nother challenge that we have to really address in the coming years.
Save that for part 2.
Save that for the second year.
Yes.
When we'll be doing this through an AI bot.
I just wanted to open this up to the floor. If anybody had any questions they wanted to ask Chris, I can, facilitate that. Otherwise, unless Chris has anything else, I think I've picked your brain enough.
So how do they submit, if they want to submit questions, they just
There
type
should be a Q&A at the bottom.
Q&A if you want to type them. I think, we'll give people a few moments if they want to type a question, but, I think what I would leave the membership with is the association is very strong, first of all. It's extremely focused on you, the member. It's very much interested in engaging and in serving and in providing you the tools that you need. We've got a really bright future ahead of us. We've got really some innovative things that we're talking about that are kind of in the incubator stage right now that we're not really ready to talk about publicly, but that relates to every facet of the organization, and we're excited about that. I think that, the big challenge will be, as I mentioned, the annual meeting. How do we service our members with a conference that they're comfortable with, that they're interested in attending because of location or cost of that location, which, again, we've done everything we can to keep that cost down as low as possible. People say to me, Libby, all the time, sometimes they'll say on the surveys, well, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And I get that. I'm not diminishing that at all. But I like to tell people, I'm not sure that you can't not afford it, because you have to come to this, because there's so much there to learn. All the folks that go to that every year always come back on the surveys. This is a constant. Oh, I learned so much, or I got to meet so many people. The networking that happens, which is part of it, the socialization. I think one of the major things, we didn't get a chance to touch on this, Libby, that our responsibility as a organization is to create a community, right? Associations exist for 2 reasons. And one is to serve its members, and 2 is to advance the industry in which we're in. We work hard to advance our members, but we have to advance the industry. And the industry that we're in is called local government. We have to do more, I think, to advance that cause. And part of that is create a community of people that come together and talk and learn from each other and gather and become stronger and become a stronger voice. And that is something that we are focused on for 2025 through the annual meeting and through other projects and other events that we have that we're planning.
Very kind comment from Maria Moran. We are so grateful for the work NYAOT does on behalf of the towns. There are several examples of how we have benefited directly from the thoughtful and persistent work. Thank you, Maria.
Great to
Yeah.
hear. Well, I thank you all for your time. I thank you all for the opportunity to serve. I thank you for this past year, and looking forward to what's to come.